Let's take a look at a couple of special situations when subtracting mixed numbers. So for this example, 4 minus 2 and 2/5. Well, you can see I have my 4 wholes. Now I could easily take away 2, but now how do I take away 2/5? Well, first what I have to do is I have to separate my 1 whole into 5/5. And now I can take away 2/5, and I'm left with 3/5. So 1 and 3/5. So 4 minus 2 and 2/5 is 1 and 3/5. Here's another example, 3 minus 4/6. Now on this one, I want to match up. So here's the 4/6 that I want to take away. I want to match up from over here, but right now, all I have is 3 wholes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out my 1, take my 1 whole, and turn it into 6/6. Now I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can see what I'm left with. I'm left with 1, 2, and 2/6, or that tells me that 2 and 3 minus 4/6 is 2 and 2/6, which I can simplify by 2 and get 2 and 1/3. Here's one more example, 5 minus 3.5. Now, if I were to do 5 minus 3.5, well, the first thing I could do is I could subtract 1, 2, 3. But now I can't take away a half until I turn one of these into halves. Now I have 2 halves, and I can now take away 1/2. I am left with 1.5. So 5 minus 3.5 is 1.5. Now, let's take a look at what the process is, what we've been doing when we do this. Now, to do 6 minus 3 and 3/8, I know I'm going to have to do some regrouping. Now, just like when we would do 40 minus 25, where there's nothing here because it's a 0, I would go next door, regroup. 10 minus 5 is 5, and 3 minus 2 is 1. That's how I would do my regrouping. Well, I'm going to do a similar thing here, except that I'm going to cross this off and make it a 5. It's only changing by 1, whereas in 40, that's actually changing by 10 because of place value. Here, we're only changing it by 1. Well, what do I want to call that one? I want to call it 8/8 because my denominator is eighths. So I'm going to take my first one here and I'm going to divide it into 8 pieces. Now, what do I really have? Well, I still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes. And I have a 6th hole here, except now I'm calling it 8/8. So it's going to be 5 and 8/8 minus 3 and 3/8, which is 2 and 5/8. Here's another example where we're going to regroup and we're going to go through the process of how we do the regrouping. So it's 5 minus 1 and 1/5. The first thing I do is I change this to a 4. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to divide it this time into 5 pieces because that's what our denominator is. Our denominator is 5. So we've changed this by 1. We're going to call it 5/5. I still have 5 holes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, except that one of them is being called 5/5. So I can write 5/5. So now what I really have is 4 and 5/5 minus 1 and 1/5. Now I do 4 minus 1 is 3. 1, 2, 3. 5/5 minus 1/5, well, I'm just going to take one of them away, so that's 4/5. Now here it is without the model. 9 minus 4 3/8. Well, I'm going to change this to an 8, changed it by 1. This time I'm going to call it eighths. So I'm going to call it 8/8 because that's what 1 whole is. 8/8 minus 3/8 is 5/8. 8 minus 4 is 4. So 9 minus 4 3/8 equals 4 5/8. Same thing here, 12 minus 6 4/5. So my denominator is fifths. So when I cross this off and make it 11, that one, I'm going to call it 5/5 this time. So I get 5/5 here. 5/5 minus 4/5 is 1/5. 11 minus 6 is 5.